Welcome to this course on copyright and related rights law. This week we have discussed sound recordings and cinematograph films. We have understood how copyright can subsist in such works despite them not satisfying the criteria of originality. What we will be looking at in two sessions, today and the next, is the understanding of copyright societies. A copyright society provides an important link between the creator and the user. We will understand how such copyright societies function and in what manner are there issues surrounding such copyright societies and their functioning. Let us start with a thought on what is it that a composer would like to spend his time doing, or rather, what would a lyricist spend his time doing. As we have discussed subject matters and our understanding of originality leads us to think that a composer and a lyricist are both creative professionals, and therefore their time would ideally be spent in developing creative expressions. Would a composer have the kind of skill, the time to engage in an effort to monitor usage of their composition? To make a sweeping statement such as that would not be right, because there could be certain composers who could have such capability and such an interest, but wouldn't it be very troublesome for a composer to identify each such usage, irrespective of where it is happening, as against the time and effort which he would rather spend creatively? We have discussed how in IPRS versus Eastern India Motion Pictures, a 1977 Indian Supreme Court decision, the court explained that where music is played for the music itself, say for instance, it is played on an aeroplane for its passengers, then the revenue that is generated on account of that particular music and its communication, who would be eligible for that revenue? In other words, who is going to be authorizing such usage? Is it the composer? Is it the sound recording producer? But irrespective of who has to authorize the communication of the music, one thing is clear, that the composer generally wouldn't have the kind of logistical ability to assess whether such usage has happened and the means to ensure that collection is done and it is received by him in a way as he desires. Communication of music on an aeroplane is just one example. There are several such communications happening across various bodies such as restaurants, hotels, cafes. To identify usage is a tough task, and therefore for a composer to engage himself completely in such an endeavor would take up a lot of time and involve a lot of stress. He could essentially place this task on the responsibility of another body which can represent his interest. Which is where we must consider that if this is the goal of a composer, then all composers or many composers would be sharing this goal. Thus, if these composers can come together, pool their resources, and create a body which can exclusively deal with matters of copyright management as against copyright creation, then such a body can take care of their common goal of monitoring usage, and revenue collection and distributions. Similar would be the case with other authors as well. Lyricists, for example, can come together. Scriptwriters can come together. Sound recording producers can come together. The important point we must keep in mind is that there is a common purpose for the creation of such a body. Let us look at some of the dimensions of this common purpose. First, and the most important purpose, is authorization of usage. Any potential user who is looking for an authorization from the owner of copyright will be facilitated greatly if there is a set body from where such an authorization can be taken. It would cut cost, it would save time for the potential user, where instead of searching for who has the copyright over a particular work, he can simply take such a authorization from a particular body. So if a specific composition has to be authorized, or a specific composition is being sought authorization for, then because a representative body is authorizing compositions generally, and the composition for which authorization is sought is something that this body will authorize, it saves a lot of time and effort for such potential users. As you must have understood, such an authorization would take into account whatever rights have been given by the copyright holder to the Copyright Society. Because the Copyright Society, as we are understanding, is a link between the copyright holder and the user, and therefore the authorizations which are permitted by the copyright holder are the only authorizations that the Copyright Society can make. The second important function that a Copyright Society undertakes is that once an authorization is granted, its role doesn't end. It will then have to see whether the authorizations are abided by. Why is this necessary? Any authorization could come with limitations. For example, consider licensing for music communication on an aeroplane. Now, how many passengers are we considering for an aeroplane? If the license is given for 30 passengers, but the music is actually being communicated in a large aeroplane with, say, 200, 300 passengers, then clearly there is going to be a violation of the agreement. Therefore, a Copyright Society must also keep a track of whether the agreement is being abided by, and it does so through monitoring. Monitoring requires its own specific set of skill. For instance, tracking it through agencies which record usage, for example, over broadcast, or sending their own agents physically to establishments such as cafes, as you can see in this image, where they can go to the cafe and see whether communication is in fact in line with the agreement or not, is something that copyright societies can undertake. Nevertheless, monitoring, as you must have understood, plays a very important role in seeing whether the agreement between the potential user, agreement between the user and the copyright society is being abided by or not. With respect to utilization, we must understand that any utilization of a work comes with a payment that needs to be made in consideration for such usage. Collection of revenue, because it is based on utilization, it could be done in two ways. One, where a perceived utilization can be made beforehand and a blanket amount can be paid. On the other side, if utilizations are dynamic and cannot be decided on a predetermined manner, then based on the actual utilization, if payment is made, then collection of that revenue becomes increasingly difficult. But be it at the time of the agreement that the consideration is paid or at the time of utilizations, this is also a task that copyright societies must undertake. Once collection has been made, it is then also the task of copyright societies, because you would realize copyright societies at the end of the day are collection of members sharing a common purpose. Because these are creative professionals, their work being used, for which revenue is collected, the money should come back to such creators. And therefore, the copyright society, in effect, you can see, carries forth a circular duty. It comes back to the point at which it starts, which is, it starts with representing the work in terms of authorization, and it goes around and completes the connected tasks to come back to the creator with the money collected from utilization of his work. Therefore, if we understand a copyright society as a bridge, it serves as an important example or an easy example for us to understand such societies. A copyright society connects the right holder with the user, and because we are considering it as a bridge, the bridge also needs its own maintenance cost. This is to say that the society itself is or need not function on a profit basis. It is a not-for-profit body which is working with the common purpose of undertaking tasks that creative professionals would otherwise not have the ability or the time and the patience for spending effort on. Let us now consider the scale of usage. Imagine that usage of a work is spread out across a particular state. In this case, let's consider Rajasthan. Rajasthan is a big state. To undertake monitoring of usage in the state of Rajasthan would require a large scale of operation. But that is just one state. What if we consider an entire country? Music communication, for instance, is not restricted by borders. The communication of a music which is generated by a composer in Rajasthan isn't just restricted to Rajasthan. If it is communicated in Telangana, operations which can monitor utilization and collect revenue from Telangana must also be present. What about usage across the world? Since we said that music is not restricted by borders, the composer from Rajasthan will have a market not only in Rajasthan, not only in wider India, but also across the world. And therefore, any such representative body would have to not only represent the interest of such composer in his home state, but also in the country and also around the world. Let us then consider a question which will help us understand how this can happen. The question is, how can a foreign author earn from use of their work in India? Let us understand that intellectual property abides by a general principle called as the doctrine of territoriality. What this enunciates is that an intellectual property right holder does not automatically gain an intellectual property right in other parts of the world simply because he has been granted intellectual property protection in his home state. So, if copyright is granted to an individual who is a citizen of India in India, it does not automatically mean that this author has a copyright in US or in UK or in Brazil. This is very clear from section 13, which we have discussed in the previous sessions as well. Section 13 is a provision which talks about works in which copyright subsists. Under section 13, as you can see, it is very clearly provided that with respect to published works, the work must be first published in India and the author must be a citizen of India. With respect to unpublished works, it says authors must be a citizen of India. In the case of architecture, because architectural works are present on the building itself, it is more of a question of where the building is located, and therefore it says with respect to an architectural work that the work must be located in India. This is a representation of the doctrine of territoriality. But what section 13 provides is that if under section 40 of the Indian Copyright Act there is an extension of application of copyright to foreign authors on account of international obligations, then such an extension would apply. In that context, under section 40, we must consider the International Copyright Order, an executive order which was passed by the central government, and under this order, For instance, if a work is published by a citizen of a country which is a member of the World Trade Organization, then it is as if the work is first published in India. The International Copyright Order is a complex order in terms of its application. I am merely providing an example of how foreign authors can earn from the use of their work in India. Therefore, illustratively, if we understand, if an author who is not a citizen of India publishes a work in UK, because UK is a member of the WTO, it will be as if that work is first published in India. And therefore, that copyright would be protected in India through the Copyright Act, despite it not satisfying this groundwork under the doctrine of territoriality. What this means is that if foreign authors can earn from the use of their work in India, similar arrangements exist for Indian authors to also earn in foreign countries for the use of their work in those countries. Therefore, because a copyright society which is based in India is extending logistical abilities in the country, it would make sense for such a copyright society to be in agreement with copyright societies in other parts of the world to ensure that this common purpose, which is shared among composers around the world, for example, is satisfied. Let us consider IPRS. IPRS is the Indian Performing Rights Society. It is a representative body of composers, lyricists, and publishers of music. IPRS is an Indian company. IPRS, as you can see, is a representative body. It is working towards the goal of monitoring usage, authorizing usage, collecting revenue, distributing revenue. Importantly, it is also the sole authorized body for issuing licenses with respect to musical works and literary music within India. IPRS engages in reciprocal agreements with other copyright societies and such representative bodies in various parts of the world. So, for example, IPRS has a reciprocal agreement with the Brazilian Union of Composers, or UBC. The way this will work, as I have explained, is that if an Indian composer whose music is being utilized in Brazil is to gain revenue from such utilization, UBC will enable such a utilization, monitoring and collection of revenue. Similarly, for a Brazilian composer to earn from utilization in India, IPRS will enable such usage. Let us also consider the question of what if there is a violation of copyright? Because we have understood that copyright societies are monitoring usage, they are authorizing usage, and therefore, if they find unauthorized usage, then what happens? Can copyright societies take up action on behalf of its members? Yes, it can. Because copyright societies work as either owners, that is, through an assignment agreement between the right holder and the copyright society, or as exclusive licensees. The copyright society can bring infringement suits where there is unauthorized usage. So you can see a copyright society serves a wholesome purpose for a composer who does not have the kind of ability to monitor utilizations. Even if he can grant utilizations, he cannot possibly be doing it individually himself, the task of monitoring, collection and distribution. And therefore, as a common goal and a common purpose where composers can come together, where authors can come together, they can empower a body, which is a copyright society, to do these tasks for them. In the next session, we are going to continue with our understanding of copyright societies, where we will look at some more important issues. Thank you for joining me. See you all in the next session. Thank you.